It is tier list season, baby. We are going to rank all of the DPS against each other in terms of power, and we are going to progressively update this every week until we hit season 3. Let's get the show on the road then. So we're just going to go as the specs are listed here. So we're going to start with the Frost DK. Now, Frost DK has been slamming on PTR. It's got amazing damage on a 45-second cooldown with Pillar of Frost and Reaper's Mark, but now Breath of Sindragosa is also a 1.5 minute cooldown. So every other Pillar of Frost is also paired with a Breath of Sindragosa for fatty AoE damage, but also great prio damage as well, which is an amazing damage profile to have. The single target seems crazy good too. I've tested a lot of this spec and the single target seems to be slapping, and somehow Frost DK just got a 10% flat damage buff across the board and even more single target damage. I don't know what Blizzard were thinking, but this spec is definitely an S tier spec for sure right now. It is literally unkillable as well. You've got AMS, you've got Lichborn, you've got Icebound Fortitude, and if you have the spare runic power, which good DKs will always have, then you're able to death strike damage that you've just taken back up. You also have an incredibly large health pool. You have death grips as well, which is some very nice niche utility, but they're always useful. We did unfortunately lose Abomination Limb, but I don't think that's a huge deal. And you also bring AMZ to the party. So Frost DK is firmly planting itself in the S tier. Okay, onto the DK counterpart then. We have Unholy DK. Like always, their AoE seems crazy good. This is thanks to Epidemic, mainly the Epidemic from the Rider of the Apocalypse. I think it's White Mane from the tier set. Epidemic is blasting, and although Bursting Swords did get capped to only eight targets, this spec still does crush the AoE meters. Though it does feel, I would say it feels slightly worse than before. But to compensate, I mean, it's not really a compensation. The Magus volleys that used to be able, if you take the right talent, they used to hit 5 targets. They will now hit 8 targets. So that's going to make Unholy better in these lower target counts. I know 8 targets is kind of up there, but it does help bridge that gap because they're no longer reliant on ridiculously large pools to pump, okay? However, their single target definitely does hold them back. I've played quite a bit of Unholy. I've seen a lot of Unholy as well, and even with cooldowns, their single target kind of sucks, which is going to hurt their placement a lot. Just like the Frost DK, they are pretty much unkillable, like the exact same toolkit that I mentioned for defensives. You're just going to death strike all the damage back up, and you've got a large enough health pool that you're going to survive one-shots. And I would say, like, I mean, I didn't make a big deal out of it for Frost DK, but the removal of A-Bomb Limb does hurt Unholy, especially with its lack of damage, especially in the single target department. Hashtag grip is not a raid buff. So Unholy DK, I'm going to put in the B tier. Now, on this tier list, I'm very aware that the B tier looks like, in fact, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to whack that up. Okay, we're going to have a D tier, just so you guys are aware that being in the B tier is still a good spot to be in, right? If it's only one tier under, then you guys are going to think, oh, okay, that means that B tier is trash, trash, trash. Next up then, we have the Havoc Demon Hunter. Now they are slamming AoE thanks to their tier set, because that is basically doubling your Blade Dance slashes for the Fury of the Eldrachi, which I'm pretty sure you now use in single target as well. But while they're slamming all of this massive AoE damage, they're also dealing some of the highest priority damage in the game because of Wounded Quarry, which at the end of the dungeon is within like your top 3 damage sources, which is nuts to have that much prior damage pumping out of this spec, and that damage profile is very sought after. So Havoc's in a very, very good spot right now damage wise. That also contributes to great single target damage for them as well. And honestly, I don't know why, but I feel like Havoc DH is, people know it's good, but I do still think that this spec is slept on, and I feel like this spec could even be S tier. I'm gonna put it in the A+ tier for now, but I feel like, especially if VDH isn't meta, then Havoc could creep in, because it brings nice utility as well. It's got an AoE stun, single target stun as well. It's got Imprison that can be used for skips. And then the reason that I mentioned VDH was because if they are not brought, then the Havoc is going to bring Chaos Brand, which is looking very nice for a potential meta that might be cooking up. They're also very tanky as well. They've got great passive leech and also passive damage reduction and a short defensive cooldown in Blur. So a solid A+ for the Havoc DH. Balanced Druid. I think it just goes straight at the top of the S tier. I don't think there is a class that does more damage than this spec at the moment. I'm pretty sure it has the most broken tier set in the game, and there's rumors that it's bugged because it's so bloody broken. But Keeper of the Grove, you're pulling all of your AoE pad damage that Balance normally has during its cooldowns. You're pulling all of that up, and then you're unleashing 2 Star Surges once your Dryad's gone, which is literally going to chunk down a priority mob and just delete it off the face of the earth, okay? The priority damage that this spec now has is disgusting, and it is 100... It's not going to stay like this, but if it does stay like this, it is 100% without a doubt meta. Balance always has amazing, consistent, sustained AoE damage, but to also give this spec now prio damage and in turn single target damage as well, nothing's even coming close to it at the moment. This spec is disgusting. Those Star Surges are critting for like 100 million back to back, and you are just literally deleting scary mobs off the face of the planet. Balance is no longer just a pad spec anymore. It's been memed about that it's a pad spec. Even when it's done like amazing AoE damage, that's been enough to bring it, let alone this damage profile that it's now bringing. It always has damage as well because it has 2 incarnations and also a low cooldown on trees as well. It brings Mark of the Wild to your group if you're not playing with a Druid already. It has great utility in terms of an AoE stop in Raw, an AoE stop in Vortex Typhoon. Nature's Vigil can be some nice off healing. Like I already mentioned, Mark of the Wild is huge. 3% burst for your whole team is undeniably good. It is still slightly squishy, but it can be babied, and I know you don't want to hear it, Banished Druids, but you can sit bear form. I know it's not ideal because you can't do any damage, but you can sit bear form. If you know one-shots are coming, you're never going to die to them because you've always got an answer with bear form, but you are very susceptible to rot damage or frequent bursts of damage where you're still trying to get your damage rotation out. Doesn't really matter though, especially if you're playing with an Oracle Disc Priest. You can just be babied and just do the most disgusting, unheard of damage in the game. Oh, that's true as well. If Keeper of the Grove is meta, then you do get, I mean, you get the free regrowths, but you can just cast regrowth on yourself and get an 8% DR whenever you need it. So that does help too. Next up, we have the Feral Druid, the kitty cat. So your tier set is massively buffing up your bleeds and is pretty much permanently up due to just being able to consistently hit Ravage. Then your Ravage is going to hit again 4 seconds later. So that is some big priority damage, especially inside cooldowns. The burst damage that Feral brings inside cooldowns is crazy high, and especially into a prio target that then also passively does AoE damage. But basically you're funneling the majority of your damage into your main target, which is always a lovely damage profile, as you're going to hear me talk about a lot. They do bring great utility as well. Same sort of vibes as Balanced Druid. They've got the 3% burst from Mark of the Wild. That's huge, enough by itself to bring a Druid. They also have AoE stops in Incap Raw, and also they have the Vortex and Typhoon combo to stop mobs there. They got a short kick because they're melee. Feral's actually tankier than Balance, especially when playing Druid of the Claw as well. They have Bark Skin on a short cooldown, Survival Instincts, which is a huge defensive cooldown, and they can also transfer a lot of the armor and health from their bear form into their cat form for a few seconds after swapping, and worst case, they jump into bear form and live the one-shot mechanic. I think I'm going to go with B tier for Feral. I think the fact that it deals all of its damage into a priority target and passively cleaves, the damage is there for Feral, but it's definitely not that of the specs that are going to be in like A+, and S tier. Okay, next up, everyone's favorite, Augmentation Evoker. Now, I've actually seen this spec pumping its own damage, which to me shows that Aug is in a great spot because it's also beefing up your party's damage. Aug hasn't been that great recently, but the tier set, especially for Scale Commander, seems to be slamming DPS. It's doing like, from what I've seen, 20+% of your overall damage. Crazy high numbers from Aug coming out, especially burst damage as well. It seems like in big AoE packs, it seems to be doing some decent numbers, which is kind of scary. I don't think Aug's anything crazy right now. It still is bringing some of the best utility in the game. It's bringing multiple AoE stops, versatility for your team, making your tankier and your healer stronger as well. It's considerably tanky as well. It brings 2 charges of Hardened Scales, is that what it's called? It's got Renewing Blaze, and it also boasts a cheat death as well, which is huge. I'm going to put Aug in the B tier. I'm going to put it just behind Unholy. Don't read too much into how I'm ranking them within the tiers. I'm going to try my best to do that and like do it in chronological order, or power order, I should say. But if they're in B tier, they're in B tier, right? They're in A tier, they're in A tier. Right, now we have the Devastation Evoker. I actually don't know if I've seen any dev on the PTR, but nothing's really changed except the tier set. They still have incredible burst. They're very good at single target damage and also mass AoE damage. It's unfortunate that with their AoE damage, it's kind of just quote unquote pad damage. You're not really funneling any damage into like a priority target, are you? Which is not great. They're semi-tanky as well, much like their counterpart Augmentation, but they don't have a cheat death. So they're lacking there. They bring nice utility to the group. They bring Zephyr, Rescue, they bring a few AoE stops, and also they bring Bloodlust. I'm going to put Dev just in front of Augmentation, but I think these could easily be swapped out. I think they're pretty similar in terms of power right now. Now we have the Beast Mastery Hunter. Now, I've tested this early in the PTR, and it was pumping. The tier set is doing ridiculous damage on both single target and AoE. I'm not sure if in AoE, the tier set damage, which is Stampede, for those of you that don't know, I don't know if that's priority damage, but I'm pretty sure it's just kind of splash AoE damage. Regardless, it is doing work. It is pumping, and it always, this spec always has damage now, regardless of the circumstance, because it's got no cooldowns, and it got even easier because now Dire Beast isn't even a cooldown. It's just purely a passive proc. But the reason I said that I tested it early is because I was pumping on it. I'm pretty sure I topped the overalls that I played the BM in. But more recently, it seems like, I don't know if there's a bug, but it seems like people think this shit is turbo broken. So I'm going to put it in the S tier. I don't know if people would place it at the top of the S tier. I haven't seen it like very recently, but I know that BM is in a very, very good spot. BM is also very tanky. I'm not really sure why people still think it's squishy. It's got 2 charges of Survival of the Fittest. It's got Exhilaration at 30% heal on a very short cooldown. It's got 30% heal and maxed health from Fortitude of the Bear. It's got extra health from their pet, and it's also got Turtle. Like, to me, in my opinion, Beast Mastery is, I mean, Hunter as a whole is kind of tanky now, but I think Beast Mastery, maybe bar Dark Ranger, is the tankiest of the Hunter specs. I think it's a very, very tanky spec. And unfortunately, the only downside to the Hunter across the board is the utility is kind of lacking. With Pack Leader, you can trigger your Binding Shot by using a Bursting Shot. You can always trigger your Binding Shot with an Implosive Trap anyway, but the reason I mentioned Pack Leader is because of Horsehair Tether, I think it's called, where when the Binding Shot is triggered, it will pull everything back to the center of the Binding Shot, so everything's neatly stacked. You can't really count Bursting Shot as an AoE stop by itself, because you fire the Bursting Shot, everything's now spread out, it's not grouped up. You can't do efficient damage, and you can't do reliable AoE CC anymore, especially if there's casters. So that is the only thing that holds it back. But apart from that, the damage is there, the tankiness is there. So BM is definitely a strong contender for the meta at the moment. Next, we have the Marksmanship Hunter, which I think after the recent nerfs is actually the worst of the Hunter specs. But I'm not saying, like, this spec is still very, very good in my opinion. It's got ridiculously high burst on AoE and single target. Dark Ranger absolutely slams on single target as well, which is something that Marksmanship has struggled with in recent times. And with the changes to Black Arrow and the Dark Ranger tree, it brings much more consistent AoE dam through the spreading of your Black Arrow, which then means that you get more consistent and overall dam from Phantom Pain, which is just your aim shot damage replicating onto targets with Black Arrow. So that brings a lot more consistent AoE damage through that. You're not always reliant on cooldowns, which Dark Ranger was more reliant on CDs than Sentinel was. In AoE, it also slams great priority damage too, because you're now able to use your precise shot stack on your Black Arrow, because Black Arrow basically functions as multi-shot in AoE now, and that's going to do even more AoE damage through Bleak Powder, and also give you trick shots to get off another aim shot or rapid fire instantly. So the damage is still great for Marksmanship Hunter. It's incredibly tanky as well. Dark Ranger is, I would argue, one of the tankiest specs in the game. You've got 2 charges of Survival of the Fittest, which is a huge damage reduction. That whenever you use Survival of the Fittest, it's going to give you a small heal because it props Exhilaration at a lesser effectiveness. But but it also works the other way around. So when you use Exhilaration, which is a 30% heal on basically a 1 minute cooldown, it's also going to give you a 40% damage reduction. Survival of the Fittest is 40%, right? 40% damage reduction on whenever you're using your Exhilaration, right? Then you have Turtle. You also have Feign Death to kind of dodge any single target spells. Sometimes it doesn't always work. Hey, don't we know it? And then again, unfortunately, the utility is a bit lacking for the Hunter. It is better for MM now because you don't need a pet to use your single target stun for intimidation. You don't need a pet to bring Bloodlust either. But because you don't need to bring a pet, you actually do lose a defensive. You lose Fortitude of the Bear as marksmanship, which hurts it a little bit, but I think Dark Ranger is so tanky anyway that you just don't even notice it. I'm going to put marksmanship in the A tier. I don't think it's quite A+. It would have probably been S before the nerfs, but it's still in a very solid spot. Survival Hunter, which has actually surprised me. Survival seems to be doing very well this season, or at least in the PTR so far. They have very consistent, great damage across the board. They have short cooldowns. Their Coordinated Assault is basically on a minute cooldown with Sentinel. But specifically in AoE and also priority damage is where they shine, and that's thanks to their bombs, and that's also because of the Sentinel tier set. This is definitely the best that their damage has been during this expansion so far. The single target is great too. It's nothing too crazy, but it definitely doesn't lack there either. So just flat out across the board, this spec is pumping, which is always a great spot to be in, and it always has damage. Much like the other specs, Survival is now in a tankier spot too. It also had its Mastery rework so that you get a bit of tankiness out of your Mastery, which is a stat that they do like to kind of hone in on. The utility is just what's lacking for this spec. They have single target stop. They got an AoE stop in Implosive Trap. They have Binding Shot, but you can't really reliably proc that. And they do bring Bloodlust, which also naturally gives them more leech because then they're playing with a Frosty pet, which gives them Predator's Thirst. I'm actually going to put Survival in the bottom of A+. From what I've seen and what I've played, this spec is pumping right now. It's going to be towards the bottom of A+, but I do think it's better than Marksmanship in its current state. Another S tier spec then, we have the Arcane Mage. Now this spec, without a doubt, has the best priority damage in the game, and it's only gotten stronger since Season 2. In Season 2, the only reason that you really brought an Arcane Mage was because it would just delete those scary, higher health priority mobs. They've only gotten stronger since Season 2, so that is pretty much cementing their place in the meta for Season 3. And that is also helped by the fact that their AoE damage has gotten even better as well. With their tier set, they are just constantly able to slam barrages back to back, get refunds, slam even more barrages. It is nuts. So especially like single target, priority damage, and cleave is where they excel. They don't have amazing like mass AoE damage, but the amount of damage that they do on cleave kind of compensates for that. It is target capped, unfortunately. But yeah, Arcane is in a great spot in terms of damage right now. It's also a mage, so basically unkillable if played well. Also, going into Season 3, somehow their intellect got buffed, so now they get 9% intellect, and they're bringing 3% in for the rest of the party. Regardless of what kind of group comp that you're rocking with, you're always going to benefit from intellect because of your healer, right? And then they bring 2 AoE stops in Supernova or Dragon's Breath, whatever you're playing, and also Blast Wave. It's another Mage season, baby. Mage is going to go right in behind Frost DK right there. I mean, it arguably could be higher, but I think after the recent buffs to Frost DK, the damage from this spec is just too crazy. Okay, sticking with the Mage then, we have Blizzard's favorite child. We have the Fire Mage. Now, from what I've tested and seen, Sun Fury was not looking too hot. It did catch a slight nerf with the recent changes, but Frostfire got a buff. Their Comet Storm damage was increased by 30%. So from what I've seen, I watched a bit of Billy the other day, his Comet Storm was doing like 20% plus of his overall, which is crazy because this spec was already pumping. Frostfire Fire Mage was slamming a lot of damage, and they're playing Ignite Fire Mage, which means all of their damage is slammed into a priority target, and it just purely passively cleaves to do its AoE damage. The best damage profile you could ask for in this game, because priority mobs, they're prevalent in every season, it seems, and Fire Mage and other specs that we see in the meta right now are taking care of them while also doing their AoE damage passively. because it's a mage as well, it's bringing some of the best utility in the game. You got 2 stops, AoE, Dragon's Breath, and also a Blast Wave. You've got a short kick, especially if it works out with your shifting power, and you're unkillable. And Fire's even more unkillable because it has a cheap death as well. Fire Mage, after the recent buffs, I'm going to put in the A+ tier, just behind Havoc and above Survival Hunter. And lastly, for the mages, we have the Frost Mage. Now, Frost seems very consistent across the board in terms of all damage profiles: single target, priority dam, cleave dam, and also AoE dam. But I don't think it really shines bright anywhere. I mean, you could argue that its priority dam is very good because it's got glacial spikes that you're firing a lot more consistently now. But that's also firing a decently sized pyroblast as well. That's going to chunk a lot of priority mobs' health. But yeah, it's kind of just consistent across the board. And I think the other mage specs just do what Frost does, but better. It's a mage, so again, it brings some of the best utility in the game. And also, as a Frost Mage, you have double ice block. So if you're playing well, then you're arguably tankier, or you are tankier than an Arcane Mage. I mean, the mage barrier for Arcane Mage does do work. But having access to 2 ice blocks is huge, especially now that they're ice cold, right? But I would argue that Cauterize is better because sometimes you're not expecting to be one shot, and Cauterize saves you in a pinch. So Frost Mage, I think like I said, the other 2 mage specs just do what Frost does better. I'm going to put Frost in the top of the B tier. Oh, where am I going to put Windwalker Monk then? So Windwalker Monk is still target capped on a lot of its AoE damage, unfortunately. However, it does bring great single target and also great cleave damage, but we are seeing a lot of big pulls in Season 3. It can keep up, especially during cooldowns, but the target cap definitely does hurt it. It's very, very tanky, so that is definitely not a problem for this spec. It's got a plethora of defensives. You've got Karma, you've got Fortifying Brew, you've got Diffuse Magic, you've got Self-Healing as well. Also, Mystic Touch got a huge buff. That is now increasing the damage enemies take by physical abilities by 8%. So that's a huge buff, especially for the physical comp that people seem to be really wanting to be meta. They bring great utility as well. They've got 2 AoE stops, a short AoE stun in Leg Sweep, and they've got Ring of Peace as well. They've got a short kick because they're melee. They've got Paralysis and Ring of Peace, which can be used in very niche scenarios to skip mobs. And I guess Mystic Touch could be classed as utility as well, right? So, for Windwalker, I'm going to place this spec in the B tier. Bottom of B tier for now. Moving on to the Retribution Paladin then. The Pad King himself. I've been playing actually quite a bit for it recently. Shock, it still has mental AoE dam and pad damage again on ridiculously short cooldowns as well. So they always have damage. They are always blasting the meters, and they're going to be able to get these cooldowns off multiple times within a pack in higher keys. However, they still lack on priority damage and single target damage, and that is Ret's biggest problem, and it will be maybe until a tier set fixes them, or they just have a talent rework. The tier set is definitely helping their priority and single target damage by beefing up the Hammer of Light and also giving you another free Hammer of Light, but it's still not enough. It hasn't really affected its overall performance too much on single target or its priority damage. So that's unfortunate for the spec, but I mean, honestly, the AoE damage makes up for that as much as it can, right? This spec is one of the tankiest specs in the game, without a doubt. It's got 3 heavy defensives off heals. It's got its different blessings as well. So you almost have to try and die on a Ret Paladin. Hey, and you Ret Paladins make it look easy. Oh, did I say that? Brings great utility as well, which separates a good Ret from like a mediocre or bad Ret, right? They've got all their different blessings. They can help out their party in lots of different ways. They've got an AoE stop in Blinding Light, and they've also got a single target stun in Hodge. I'm going to put Ret at the top of the A tier. Actually, I'm going to put it behind Marksmanship. Okay. Shadow Priest then. So, Shadow maybe has, well, I mean, it has one of the best damage profiles in the game. It's got a 30-second or even beefier 1-minute DPS cooldown, like gameplay loop. So that funnels all of your damage into a priority target and passively cleaves. It's almost as passive as Ignite Fire Mage, but obviously you just have to make sure his Shadow Crash lands. You've got 2 charges of Shadow Crash now as well, so that's going to make that a lot easier. And this priority damage that I'm talking about comes from its single target. Its single target is freaking absurd right now. I don't know if I've seen, like, it might have some of the best single target in the game at the moment. I'm pretty sure it does. And going into AoE, that doesn't change. You're still doing all of that, pretty much all of that same single target damage into a main target. So you're nuking that down while also nuking everything else down with your Psychic Link damage. So they literally just delete scary mobs. They're like Arcane. They don't do as much priority damage as Arcane, I don't think, but they do more AoE damage. They're also pretty tanky, pretty considerably tanky as well. They have a 20% damage reduction whenever they need it with their Flash Heal and their Fade. They have Desperate Prayer, Dispersion, and also they have their shields. Their utility is great as well, some of the best in the game. Power Word Fortitude, extra stamina for your whole group. Mass Dispel, super useful. Power Infusion, very nice, especially when paired with some other specs that we're seeing in the meta. And then what I was going to touch on is Vampiric Embrace, being the only sort of meaningful hybrid off healing that's left in the game. So that is really nice, especially on big scary pools. Some of the off healing that the spec does is nuts. So Shadow Priest looking in a very strong spot for season 3. I'm going to put Shadow Priest in the S tier. I think right now with what I've heard about BM, the damage is just crazy. It's bonkers. So I don't think Shadow Priest is as good as these other specs, but I think like all of these specs are in an insane spot right now. And Shadow Priest, I think, is definitely very worthy of being in the S tier. All right then, let's move on to the class that Blizzard seems to have forgotten about this patch, or just forgotten about since what, Dragonflight maybe? I don't know. Let's start with Assassination. So Asa is getting even higher prio down with their tier set for Deathstalker, and they already had amazing priority damage. You're feeding all of your AoE damage into a priority target and then passively cleaving with your Caustic Spatter. Great damage profile to have. It's still not amazing on single target, but it's definitely been helped out. But they just all around have good consistent damage across the board. And that is also helped by the tier set buffing their Shiv as well. They did also, I think it was last night, they got an 8% flat damage buff across the board. So that is definitely going to help the spec. And I think, is Asa the best performing rogue spec right now? I think it probably is likely to be. Assassination, I'm going to put in the A tier. It's a rogue. It brings, as Assassination as well, you have the extra silences from Iron Wire. Is that what it is? I haven't looked in a while. But you've got 2 single target stuns. You've got an AoE blind as well. You've got a short kick. Defensively, rogue is sound. You've got your evasion, 2 charges of feint that if you're confident enough to play without a cheat death, you're basically just able to take 40%, is it 40 or 30% less damage whenever you press feint from all damage sources, so that is huge. And you also have Cloak of Shadows, and then if you don't take elusiveness, you do have a cheat death. So yeah, I think Asa's in a good spot. I don't think there's anything to write home about. I think it might be the best rogue spec at the moment, so solid A tier for Asa. Okay, next up we have the Outlaw Rogue. Now I am so torn with where to place this. This is by far and away the worst spec that I've played so far. It just feels like an absolute mess. And even when I know how to play Outlaw, I'm no expert, but I know how to play it. And even when going into a boss with a 5 buff stacked up already and playing the rotation well, I was still fighting for my life against the tank. I don't know what was going on. I literally like had to check my gear. It felt that bad. I was like convinced I had an intellect weapon on or some shit. I don't know. Killing spree has also been changed. It hits like a wet noodle. It did get slightly buffed, but when I press this button, I just want it to nuke down mobs, right? Like I want that to be an AoE nuke that I actually see on my damage breakdown, right? But the reason that I say I don't know where to place this is because then I see good Outlaw players kind of pumping with this spec, or at least keeping up with this spec, right? So I'm really torn because I don't know, like, obviously I don't want to rank it off of the top players playing Outlaw, and I'd like to think that I would be able to play Outlaw to a good level where I could see if it was doing damage or not, like I've done in every single recent season. But I just did not get that from Outlaw at all. I don't know if it was a bug, I'm not sure what it was, but I think a good Outlaw can pump, okay? They always have damage, which definitely plays into their favor, They are target capped, but it is to 8 targets. How often are you really likely to pull more than 8 mobs and have that actually matter that much? I don't know. It's a rogue, so great utility. It's got, I didn't mention this for Asa, but it's got Sap and Shroud as well, which is great for skips. Outlaw, I'm going to place in the B tier. I'm going to put it slap bang in the middle of B tier, okay? Because I'm a bit wary. Like, I know that some people can make it work, but I'd like to have thought that I could have made it work, but I didn't. Last up for the rogue specs then, we have the sub rogue. Now, I feel like I'm worse sub rogue than I am at outlaw, but I was doing a lot more damage on sub. Sub has a really nice damage profile going into Season 3 because you're playing Trickster, which also just got a buff on its coup de grace. But basically, as Trickster, you just use your single target rotation in pretty much any AoE or in any damage scenario. Maybe mass AoE, you'd swap to Black Powder. I think it's above like 8 targets, you start to use Shuriken Storm and maybe Black Powder. But even then, you can still Shadow Strike and also Eviscerate into your main target, because you're going to be passively cleaving with your Nimble Flurry, which basically turns those single target abilities into passively cleaving abilities as well. Nimble Flurry is most of your damage in by the end of a dungeon run, so that's super nice because you're able to just funnel, especially during cooldowns, you're able to just funnel this immense priority damage into a scary mob or bosses, and you just chunk bosses or priority mobs down with the insane burst that this spec brings. Again, rogues are very tanky. 2 charges of Feign that you can use Elusiveness, get a 20% damage reduction whenever you need it, pretty much. You've got Cloak, you've got Evasion. I don't know, I'm sure that they probably get buffed up by Trickster as well, or is that Fate Bound? I can't exactly remember, but it's like one uses the other one. They got great utility too. With Shadow Dance, you can cheap shot multiple mobs, and you've got Kidney Shot as well. You've got an AoE stopping blind and Shroud and Sap to skip mobs. I'm going to put Sub right next to Asa. I don't know exactly which is the better of these 2 specs right now, but they are both in a good spot. Right, let's move on to Shaman then. So let's first start with Elemental, which is the worst of the 2, unfortunately. I'm definitely looking at Shami as my main next season. Ellie has amazing damage inside its cooldowns, especially on AoE. It's pretty hard to keep up with an Elemental when they have like everything going for them in AoE. But outside of cooldowns is where they're held back, as well as their single target, but we'll touch on that in a second. They're very, very proc reliant outside of their cooldowns, which is no bueno. It has gotten better with the tier set because they're getting more Ascendants and more Tempest. But if you don't proc, then you are going to be lacking on damage. In higher keys, you're going to have longer times to get more proc, so that is going to help your damage. But yeah, it's very cooldown reliant, which is not a great place to be. They do have great priority damage, although their single target is lacking because of the way Echoes work. So they're always firing Elemental Blast or Overload into their main target, and also Tempest as well. And the only other thing that I've just thought of right now is their damage. A lot of it is target cap because a lot of their overall damage is Chain Lightning, which I think is 5 targets. So that's not ideal, but they do still deal a great amount of AoE damage. Now I mentioned already that they do lack on single target. Even with their cooldowns, their single target is still quite lacking. It is passable, but it's definitely going to hurt their placement. Shamans in general, they bring some of the best group utility in the game. They bring Sky Fury now, which is a mastery buff and also helps melees like Frost DKs, which is potentially in the meta right now. They have 2 AoE stops as Elemental, a short kick, and they bring Bloodlust. They are still unfortunately quite squishy. They have Astral Shift on a relatively short cooldown, and they have Stone Bulwark Totem. But outside of that, they're pretty squishy unless they get babied by an Oracle Disc Priest, for example. So they can get away with it, but defensively, they are definitely not strong. Elemental, I'm going to put in the A tier, just behind Marksmanship, I think. Okay, let's move on to its big bro then. We have the Enhancement Shaman. Now the tier set is juicing the frick out of this spec. This spec was already good in Season 2, but now it's just better. More Ascendances and more Ascendants and more Tempest. Tempest is your top down by a country mile, and it's just playing into that even more. And that's also going to give you more Ascendance through your Awakening Storms. So yeah, you're always, you feel like you're always in Ascendance, which is your main cooldown. So obviously that's always going to be an amazing addition. This spec just shits out crazy high AoE damage, good single target, and good prio damage as well. It has one of the best utility kits in the game, and especially for pugging, I would say. It's probably got the best utility kit in the game for pugging. It's got 3 AoE stops. If you talent into Sundering, you've got Cap Totem, you've got Thunder Shock, and you've also got Sundering. You've got shortest kick in the game. You've got Ank to get yourself back up. PCT or Poison Cleansing Totem, which is very nice for your Season 3 dungeons. And again, it brings Sky Fury, Frost DK, and Enhanced. They're a deadly duo together. They're going to be pumping out damage. Enhanced is slightly squishy, much like Ellie. You can get babied, and if you can live one-shots as Enhanced, you can also pump heals into yourself by using your Maelstrom to pump healing surges into yourself. So that can definitely make you tankier, especially to things like rot damage. You can definitely help yourself out. Enhanced is going in the S tier. Where is it going? I think I want to put it above BM, like kind of slap bang in the middle of the S tier. I think I'm going to put it above Arcane actually, because then it's also going to bring your Sky Fury, sorry, for your Frost DK, which is going to be huge. Let's move on to the Warlock specs then. Let's start with Affliction. So Soul Harvester Affliction is the spec that I've been playing, and Soul Harvester is doing work. It is cranking in mass AoE, cleave, just overall damage. Most of your damage breakdown is Soul Harvester, honestly. This spec in specific, Affliction, still infamously struggles with single target. It did get buffs to pretty much all of its single target abilities, but I don't think that is enough. I think it still needs help in the single target department, but on mass AoE, it does great. Warlocks, we know that they're passively very tanky. They've got big HP pools, they've got big absorb shields, they've got Dark Pact on a very short cooldown, they've got Health Stones, which can also be considered utility. That's very nice and always a welcome addition to any group. And they've got a bigger defensive cooldown with Unending Resolve. Affliction actually isn't looking too bad. It's definitely in a solid state. I'm going to put Affliction in the B tier. Where do I want to put it in the B tier is the question. It's going to go there. Okay, different story for Demo. So we have seen some nerfs to the Soul Harvester tier set, but this spec is pumping. Much like Season 2 PTR. I feel like because nobody really plays Demo, it's just super slept on, but this spec freaking cranks right now. It's got very good single target damage, incredible consistent AoE damage, even outside of its short cooldowns, because Soul Harvester is propping it up a little bit now. After the recent nerfs, it won't be so much, but somehow it just got even more single target buffs. Literally, I think that was literally last night, and implosion buffs as well. This spec has great damage on a 1-minute cooldown, even better damage on a 2-minute cooldown with their Felguard, and also just great consistent damage through their Implosions, Hand Guldans, and their Charhounds as well. They bring Hellstones to the group, always a welcome addition. They bring combat res as well. They've got an AoE stop in Shadow Fury. The only problem with Demo specifically is that they can't kick ranged mobs in because it's tied to a stun for whatever reason. Don't know if that's a PvP thing. I don't know why we're still balancing this game around PvP, because PvP is dead. Super tanky spec as well. They've got Dark Pact on a short cooldown. They've got Unending Resolve, and they are just a Warlock. They've got their Demonic Health Stones, which can be used multiple times inside a fight. Demo is in a very good spot right now, and I feel like nobody really knows about it. I honestly feel like this spec is one of the best specs in the game at the moment. I'm going to place Demo in the A+ tier in front of Survival. I think you guys will be surprised how much damage this spec is doing. Okay, finally up for locks, then we have the Destro. Seems to be the same old story with Destro, to be honest. It's able to pump DPS during its cooldowns and in massive packs. It's pretty hard, like especially think of dungeons like Slayer's Gambit. It's gonna be very difficult to keep up with a Destro lock inside its cooldowns in those big AoE, mass AoE pools. But outside of cooldowns and outside of big pools, it feels like just maybe slightly above average. It does bring nice single target as well. They did also get buffs to their single target recently, but again, the single target is nothing crazy or nothing to write home about. So I think Destro as a whole is just like, it's good. It's nothing crazy, and Demo just is miles better than Destro in my opinion. Again, Destro is very tanky, and it brings some nice utility to the group. You can also use Demonic Gateway. I didn't mention this for the other specs, but you can use Demonic Gateway for some skips, which is always nice. Destro, I'm going to put inside the A tier. Let's go there. And then last and least, we got the Warriors. Now, unfortunately for Warrior as a whole, they have to shit out incredible damage to even be considered to be brought, because they bring nothing else to your group. I mean, they add some value in a physical comp, but even then other specs just do that better. Arms does seem to do very well in AoE, and it seems like their single target as well is dramatically better than before. I feel like single target's always kind of been a problem for Arms, but I think that's kind of been bridged a little bit, it seems, or at least from what I've seen anyway. Yeah, it seems to be doing some decent numbers just across the board. Definitely nothing crazy, and definitely not enough to warrant bringing it to an actual respectable comp. So hey, stay in Dornagal, Warriors. But I do think Arms is in a decent spot. I'm going to put Arms in the middle of B tier. It's decent defensively. You've got your Die by the Sword, you've got your Spell Reflection, you've got your instant heal. Fury is tankier than Arms, but we'll get onto that in a sec. You just unfortunately bring like zero utility to your group. You've got Battle Shout, which is nice. It's a nice addition for a physical comp. You've got Stormbolt in a single target stun, and you can turn it into Shockwave as well. Fury Warrior, target cap to 5 targets. Horrible, horrible, horrible for the spec. It does do decent single target, but again, especially with this dungeon pool that we're seeing in Season 3, we're going to be doing big AoE pools, and Fury is only going to be hitting 5 of those, and it does horrible AoE damage because of that. It's like tankier than Arms with a lot of passive self-sustain and healing through their rotation, but Fury is down tremendously, and it's looking like the worst spec, in my opinion, for Season 3, as the current meta would stand. So that is all of the DPS ranked against each other in terms of power for Season 3. Now, we are going to be updating this every single week until the season hits, and even we might continue it after. But basically what we're going to do is just revisit this tier list and only change the specs that have had changed themselves, right? Whether it's class tuning, whether it's tier set tuning, whatever it is, we're going to be changing it about, and then we'll see as we approach the season what specs are shaping up to be the meta specs and what specs still aren't doing so well.